get everybody in here. Wait a few minutes before everybody jumps on here. Hello, everyone. Jack, it's probably you, right, who just jumped on. Put it in the chat if it is. We're expecting a few others to come on, so I'm going to wait a little bit, and then I'll get into my coverage of the 2025 draft, as well as talk more about the upcoming OHL draft, the WHL draft, and the QMJHL draft. I'll get my thoughts and everything on each of them. So obviously, Jack, we'll talk more about the 25 draft, my thoughts on it, where I think the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, what countries have, the best draft people, in my opinion, and kind of go from there. So without further ado, I'm just going to roll, and, more people are going to come on eventually. So I'll just start and go ahead right now. So as far as the 2025 class goes, big fan of the goaltending within this draft. Last year was the year of the defenseman. This year is the year of the goaltender. So to me, I think there's probably 3 or 4 guys who I could see in the, anywhere from the first to the third round. In terms of goaltenders, the main goaltender that everybody seems to talk about right now is Pyotr Andreyanov, who is a Russian guy, plays for the Red Army in Russia, in the MHL level, which is the under 20 level in Russia, and he's been really dominant in there. I think, to me, he's a guy who could sneak into the first round. A lot of Russian people that evaluate goalies have put him upwards, with the likes of Sorokin and Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, and there's a lot of potential for him there. I have him at 20 on my board. I think he'll probably be around that slot, in my opinion. I don't see him going higher than that just because of the value of the prospects that are out there, but there's a lot of good goalies as well. A couple Swedish goalies. One guy who played at the U18s last year, his name is Luve Hermstam. He plays for, I believe, Luya in the Super Elite League. He'll go and probably get some pro time even this year. Luve Hermstam is a guy who I believe could be a first, he could slide into the end of the first round depending on how good his year is, but I could see him more as a second round pick. So we'll see where he goes from there. Another guy who is got some bloodlines, Stefan Leif's son, Herman Leif. This kid's a dual national. He's Swedish and Polish. Who's been playing in the Swedish under 20 leagues and the U18 leagues for the last couple of years now. A shorter goalie, is about 5'11", 6 foot, so right on that border of being an effective NHL goalie, but an interesting prospect nonetheless. And then going into another guy who I think is going to be really impressive is I'm going to go down my list here. Sorry. We have Roberto Leonardo Henriquez, who is another dual national playing in Slovakia. He's Slovakian and he's also Cuban, which there has never been a Cuban to make the National Hockey League outside of Al Montoya. So it'd be another goalie from Cuba in terms of dual national perspective, but he'd probably represent Slovakia as a goaltender. Really solid goalie. A guy who I think could be a real big riser, and definitely could see him in the second or third round, maybe even first, because he's an outstanding year at the pro level. But going into the rest of the draft here, I think it's a weaker year for defensemen. I don't have any defensemen in my top 20. Is that realistic to think that there will be no defensemen in the top 20? I'd say no. I think it depends on what you're looking at from the overall prospects that are out there. A lot of people really like Logan Hensler. I'm not as bullish on Logan Hensler because I think there is a lot of things in his game that don't really translate offensively. I would like to see Logan be able to be a little more dynamic that way. Trethaway is another guy you just mentioned as well. I'm okay. I like his game a lot more than I like Hensler. I think Trethaway for me is probably the top-ranked defenseman available in this year's draft. He plays for the under-18 program, and I think he's gonna be a really talented NHL player. I think those two to me are, the two guys that everybody's kind of thrown out there as main names right now. I could see, I have a guy who I think he's kind of a diamond in the rough kind of guy right now. It depends on how his year develops. But there's a Latvian defenseman who I think is really talented, and Rinus Ozins plays for Eves in the under-18 level and had a really good year. Very curious to see where he goes in terms of, his potential. He may be drafted, he may not be. He's right on that border of being 5'11", 6 foot, but he's apparently a really good skater, has gotten some offense, and obviously we need a really breakout year in order to be put up in the really high echelon of where a lot of these guys are in the prospect world. But he's a guy who I think is kind of underrated as well. Spence is a forward actually for Erie, and then Matthew Schaefer is another guy who could be considered as well. I'm again with Schaefer, I'm not as bullish on him as well. I think the defensive class to me, I think, is really weak this year comparatively. I think, looking at last year, you obviously had Lev Shanov, you had, Zane Parekh, you had a lot of these guys that were, to me, looked like they had everything you could want, in a defenseman. I liked the all-around game of Lev Shanov. I liked that Parekh was so offensively gifted. They all had these really elite skill sets. And I think a lot of the guys in this year's class for the defensemen are a little bit weaker in terms of there isn't a high-end skill that I think any of them really truly have. Schaefer's a decent skater. Hensler's known for his skating, but I wouldn't call them top-class skaters comparatively to some of these other really elite prospects. Obviously, you can look at my list here. There's a couple Finns I have coming up there, and Mensinen and Orpana. Both of those guys are going to play in the Helenka Gretzky Cup in the next couple weeks, so we'll see where their upside comes into play there. 17, a guy who's, I think, going to potentially shoot up some boards depending on how he is offensively is Jacob Ees Wozniak. He's a Swedish guy. He's gotten some SHL time already, but I think he could find himself really dominant either at the super elite level or might find himself some pro time in the back half of the year. Really good shot, really good straight line skater, good speed. I think there's more to give with him, but I think, to me, he's solidly a first rounder. Could even see himself potentially in the top 10 as well. Ben Cavan is a guy who played for Des Moines in the USHL this year. Big scorer. I think he had close to 30 goals this year as a rookie in the USHL. I would expect that he's going to put up more points this year. And if he continues in the trajectory like he is, I could see him being in that Trevor Connolly style of player. I don't think he's as skilled as Trevor Connolly, but I like the offensive ability that he showcases. And I think the production could be very similar. A wild card here at 15, LJ Mooney. I've caught many games of this kid. I really like LJ Mooney's game. The big thing is he's on Elite Prospects. You look him up, he's 5'6" on 150 pounds. He obviously has some growth that has to be had there. That might be an old statistic. He might be closer to 5'8". That's for Central Scouting to figure out. But this kid's got oodles and oodles and oodles of skill. Beautiful stick handler, great passer. His wrist shot in particular can really beat you in a lot of different ways. I think defensively there's some work still in his game, but he's definitely adept at being a good defensive player in the offensive zone as well as in his own zone. But the size is the biggest thing for him. LJ might find himself in the top 10 based on upside, but in terms of his size, he may drop to the 4th or 5th round. It just depends on how his body builds, how his game goes over the next, 8 to 12 months, and we'll see what happens. But there's a lot to like in LJ Mooney. He was a guy who very early on I had him being in the top 5. I think because of the lack of size, I don't have him there anymore. But the talent is certainly there. Arvid Drott is another guy who plays for he plays in Sweden, and he played for the under-18 team at the U18s this year. He will also be at the Helenka Gretzky Cup as well. This is just a really responsible all-around guy, very good in both zones. More of a puck hound. Doesn't score a lot, but can score, because of the opportunities he creates for himself and for his teammates. Really just a good straight line guy. I think there's, he's not the most exciting player to watch, but I think he's so effective in what he does, and he's good at chipping and charging, getting into the corners, making sure he's understanding where other guys are in the offensive zone and how to set himself up with proper picks, good screens, a lot of different things like that. He's just a very savvy player, and I think that's going to really sell himself a lot in the upside, in terms of his upside for a lot of the GMs out there. Number 13, and this is a guy who is similar to LJ Mooney and Adam Banach. Adam Banach is a really gifted offensive player as well. Got some pro time in the Czech Republic. More than likely needs to be at the junior level, just because, again, he's a smaller guy at about 5'7", and I want to say he's about 150. So he's about similar size to LJ Mooney, but a guy who very skilled, has regularly pulled off the Michigan move in various levels across Czechia. And then, watching his passing, watching his skating, the cerebralness, the way he thinks the game. He's just a very impressive player in his own right. Now, in terms of upside, he fits right in here in the, in that top 10 tier. So it just depends on what you're like out of him. Viggo Nordlund is another guy. Sweden, I think, has a really very great class this year. I'm really bullish on a lot of the Swedes. I don't know if the scouts will be as bullish as I am on it, but definitely like his game and like his ability as well. Should see where he's going to go from here. I think he's going to find himself, probably back at the under 20 level. He's going to really have to dominate in super elite, and then, he'll move into the SHL level for Skellefteå, and we'll see where he goes from there. Roger McQueen, MI11 spot, plays in the Western Hockey League for the Brandon Wheat Kings. This is a power forward, big kid at 6'5", 200 pounds. He still has really got to fill out his body, but just a great skater at 6'5", good nose to the net, not afraid to get into the dirty areas, just a good physical breed of player. He looks like he's like 14 years old still, because he's very youthful, and there's a lot of growth, I think, still within him physically. But this is a guy you could see putting up, 20 to 25 goals, potentially in the National Hockey League, at a unique frame of 6'5" and 230. So you're looking at maybe a Quentin Byfield light here in terms of the player that you're looking at with Roger McQueen. Victor Eklund at 10. He is the brother of William Eklund, who plays for the San Jose Sharks. Similar player as well. I don't think he's as skilled as William is, but he's definitely in his own right. He can hold his own. I think he's a better skater than William is. I think the creativity is where William kind of defers to his talent. But a guy who I think is going to find himself in the top 10 of a lot of boards. GMs love bloodlines. They're going to look and see that he's another skilled player, very similar vein to William. And seeing the success that Williams had for San Jose and will continue to have for San Jose, I think is going to really propel him up some boards. Victor Klingstell, this is a guy who I don't see him going this high, but I just feel this strongly about him as a player. I've never caught a bad viewing of him. I've watched 3 or 4 viewings of him now. He's just super smart in all 3 zones, really effective. He doesn't blow you away with his game, similar to Arvid Drott. Doesn't really blow you away with his game, but he's so on top of everything. He never makes a mistake. And that's a huge upside thing to have for a player. And so at the very least, he's going to have, he might have a low floor, but his floor is still going to be NHL capable. And I think there's a lot of scouts that are going to really like that. And you're seeing a lot more picks being made in these recent drafts based on that mindset. So I have Victor a little higher probably than most would. I think Victor right now falls in the late first round for a lot of people, but I think he will see himself rising up the boards here coming into this year's draft. Cole Reshny is another really high-end offensive talent. Has scored in bunches at the Western Hockey League level. A little bit of a smaller guy, but he holds his own really well. I don't think he's weak at all at being 5'9" and about 170 pounds. I think he brings a lot to the table in terms of his game and his ability and what he can do in the Western Hockey League. So he's going to be looked at this year to put up similar production to like a Tanner Howe or like some various other Western Hockey League prospects that have put up 80, 90 points in their draft year. So this is an opportunity for him to really grow and develop, and we'll see what happens with Cole Reshny. Number 7 is Porter Mortone. from the Mississauga Steelheads in the Ontario Hockey League. Porter is a big guy. He's 6'3" and about, I think, 190 right now. He's still growing into his body. I can see Porter really rising up here into potentially even the third or fourth spot. I have him just a slightly below Michael Misa, but overall a really good talent, good straight line skater. Did a really good job at the under 18 level for the World Juniors. I think he had 18 points in 7 games for Canada. Was putting up a ton of production all year long, internationally, playoffs, anything you could ask for, he had. And Porter is a really talented player in his own right. I think he brings a very good power forward game. He looks to me, and I don't have enough viewings to really call this a good comparison, so I don't want to say it as a direct, but I think there's a lot of Joe Thornton in his game. And as you know, Joe Thornton has, gone on and done a really tremendous job of being a National Hockey League player, and obviously he's left the league. But I like that he's got that similar skill set. So Porter, for me, I just have him a little bit lower because in the viewings I've watched him, he's not as demonstrative as I would normally like a top 5 pick to be at his own age group. And I didn't watch a ton of the U18s for him specifically, but I did catch the Mississauga games. I thought he was good. He's definitely a top, he's got the top 5 upside, no question. I just need him to show it a little more for me. Emil Guite was the QMJHL Rookie of the Year. This kid has got a shot from beyond, already a pro-ready shot. A little bit smaller, but just an incredibly cerebral player. I really like his game. He reminds me a lot of Alex DeBrincat. I think there's more upside even than Alex has right now. I could see this kid putting up 30 goals in the National Hockey League just because his shot is so lethal. Really good at getting off quick releases, good snapshot. His wrist shot, when he gets into play and he finds himself, he's able to really shoot the puck well. Or if he can't find that option, he's really good at deciphering passing lanes. He'll put it through people's skates. He'll put it around people. He'll find the boards and get it through to people. He's just got incredible vision. I think he's one of the more cerebral and more advanced playmakers in this draft that somebody could really love. And I think that high upside is going to bring him up into the top 10, in my opinion. Number 5 for me is Malcolm Spence. Malcolm Spence, again, another big guy, power forward, really good skater. I think he fits more into that breed of being a Malkin style forward. Just really using his body to shield pucks. Not necessarily the Malkin skill level, but I think he brings that kind of ability and that use of his body to help formulate chances for the team around him as well as for himself. There's a lot to like there with Malcolm. He's a very safe pick, and I think he'll be a guy who is going to find himself, he might be a victim of over scouting because he's been so used to being scouted, being, teammates with Michael Misa for the Mississauga Senators, then going to Erie and playing in Erie for a few years. People have gotten a lot of viewings of Malcolm Spence, so I hope he's not a victim of over scouting, but I could see that happening very easily. Number 4 is Ivan Ryabkin, plays for Dynamo Moscow in the MHL. I have him at 4 here because I have him similar to like a Demidov, a Michkov. He's in that talent pool, no question. I think he's a distant third behind those two. But I couldn't see him being higher than 4, in my opinion. I think Ryabkin's been dominant. I think he's been super solid at every age group he's ever been in. I think his skating and the way he brings the puck up and everything, his physical tools are better than Michkov and Demidov. But I think the skill isn't as high as a Demidov or a Michkov, which is why I kind of placed him in this 4 range. I got to get more. I've gotten a couple viewings of him. I want to get more viewings of him this year, obviously. But there's a lot to like there with Ivan Ryabkin. I think his stats speak for himself. Michael Misa is a guy who's been, obviously an exceptional status guy. Has been known since 14. Played for the Saginaw Spirit now for a few years. I've caught a lot of viewings of him over the years. I love his game. I think he's super smart. There is no weakness in his game. If anything, I think I would want his skating to improve just a little bit. I think he doesn't have the top line speed that some of these other prospects have. But his deceptiveness and the way he processes the game and the way he is defensively, and there's no rush with him. He's a very level-headed in everything he does on the ice. You never see him make, a bad decision. His panic threshold is really solid. And there's a lot to like with Michael Misa there. Number 2, Anton Frundell. This kid is Matt Sundin personified, in my opinion. Just a big human being. Really good at rushing the puck to the net. Good shot. Very cerebral in terms of he's always looking at all parts of the ice. Defensively, he's very responsible. He can get back, and back check really well, and he actually emphasizes that a lot within his game. Just dominated at the World Junior Summer Series last year. Again, the under 18 level was easy for him. I think he's going to find himself. To me, he's the most pro-ready prospect right now in his current state. Obviously these guys develop over the course of the year, but I think Anton, to me, is a guy who, if he continues the projection and the development track that he's on right now, he's going to find himself to be the most NHL-ready prospect out of this pool. And then finally, number 1, James Higgins. Can't say more about him. This kid, it looks exactly like Patrick Kane did at 18. Is absolutely going to dominate at Boston College. I think you're going to look to him to have a similar, upside to Fantilli and Celebrini and Eichel and Larkin and Kyle Connor and all those that have played college hockey before him. This kid will be a point per player game. I think he'll be a Hobey Baker candidate. He's going to be playing on a loaded team. I think he's going to lead a lot of that team, and he's an unbelievable playmaker. He makes plays and has vision that is beyond anybody in this draft. I have him, honestly, I think in terms of comparing him to Macklin Celebrini, I think offensively, James Higgins does beat Macklin Celebrini in terms of his overall playmaking package. I think the scoring ability is very equal, but I think in terms of how he distributes pucks, how he starts plays, how he manifests plays out of nothing, James Higgins has an ability that even far exceeds the likes of a Macklin Celebrini. Macklin Celebrini is very good in his own right. So for me, he's just got that transcendental skill set. He's declaring away the number 1, which is why I have the colorways the way I do. That's tiers of how I think these prospects set up right now. And we'll see what else is going on here. So sorry, Jack. I have him in the chat here, so I was just catching up with everything going on here. Yeah, LJ Mooney. Yeah, I think he's super underrated, Jack. Thanks for putting that on there. Really talented player. I like his ability. I like his skill set. I've already talked about him ad nauseum. I think McQueen could be a top 5, top 10 if he really keeps it up with Brandon. I totally agree. Like I said, for the reasons I did, I'm not going to repeat myself. You've been on here. So good prospect. Really like his game. Just the total project and package of him is super impressive. I really like what he brings to the table. Martone is the top 3 player in this draft. Like I said, I put him at 7 because I need him to show more for me personally. A lot of people already have him at 3. I'm not opposed to him being 3. Just depends on what I'm seeing out of him, I guess. Like I can only do what I can see out of my viewing. So that's why I have him a little lower. And then obviously I just talked about James Higgins. So for those that are on here as well, there's probably been people bouncing in and out. I've really been more focused on the 25 draft. But like Jack, feel free to leave your questions in on here. This is also going to just be replayed as well. So, if you don't catch it on the initial live stream, feel free to put your questions on the chat or put them in the comments. I'll answer them. I'm pretty active on here. So, and I'll be doing more stuff when it comes to the 2025 draft coverage as we go on here in the next little bit. So Jack goes, unfortunately, I had a chance to meet Higgins last month at a high school graduation party in my town. But unfortunately, I didn't go. Oh, that's a bummer. That would have been cool for you. I wonder if Michael, his brother, would have been there too, especially if they're that close. So then, yeah, for any other questions of the 25 draft, feel free to leave them in the chat. I have some other guys that I think are kind of underrated as well that are lower in my draft, but I just focused on the top 20 today. So feel free to leave those comments in the chat below. But I'm going to get more into now the OHL, the QMJHL, and the WHL drafts now. Some prospects that I think could be, some high upside guys. I did a rough top 10 for each of them right now. So I'm going to go stop my screen right now, and then I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here so I can show you the chats. Sorry, the board. So I'm going to go QMJHL first. So Jack goes on here. His girlfriend is best friends with a girl that I went to high school with. Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So going into now the QMJHL draft, this is the top 10 here. I'm going to start off with Alexis Joseph. I'm going to do a video on him pretty soon here. Alexis Joseph is a guy who almost applied for exceptional status, actually. Really high-end player, big frame kid, has been dominant at the under 18 level. Already was a top 10 scorer as a 14-year-old, which is just crazy to think about. This kid just turned 15. He's 6'3" and about 190 pounds. They have him at 185, but I think he's probably gained more since. This is a guy who in the 27 draft is going to be a top 10 pick. There isn't a doubt in my mind. Big kid. Reminds me a lot of Quentin Byfield when he was 14. Just a massive human being, good skater, dominates with his edges. Really big power forward style player. Has gone and just scored, just out of will. I'm going to go ahead and load his stats here so you guys can see it. Like I said, he's 2027 draft eligible. And look at the stats he's putting up. This is him at, 12, 13 years old at under 15 level. Just 17 points casually in 7 games. And then you look to see here, and he played midget Espoir, the U15 level, and then at the U18 level this year, as a 14-year-old, was just super dominant. Really high-end kid, a guy to definitely watch out for in the coming years. A lot to like with him. The second overall guy here is Jaden Pominville. For those that are familiar, Jason Pominville is his dad, played for the Buffalo Sabres, had 800, 900 points in the NHL. He himself is also a really good player, super smart. Not the biggest guy in the world, but again, he's 15. He's going to have time to grow. He'll probably grow to about 5'10", 5'11". The skating will get there. He's not necessarily the best skater either. I've caught maybe 1 or 2 games of his. But a lot to like. Very smart player, good around the net. Doesn't wow you, but he's smart in every decision he makes. James Scantlebury played for Bishop Kearney Selects, one of the big programs out in the Northeast. Really good prep academy for a lot of young prospects, and a lot of kids are coming out of there in the last few years. This is a kid with just oodles of skill and oodles of skating. Really fast, good accelerator, brings a lot to the rink and different things like that. So dominated actually at the under 14 level. He actually played on a team where they were dead last, and he was a top 10 scorer in the league with his team having 2 wins. And, I think he outscored his teammates by 70 points or something crazy. It was something astronomical. But James Scantlebury is a guy who should definitely be on a lot of people's radars. He will be a guy who will slip into the first round in his draft year, which I believe he's a 2027 draft year. A lot to like with him, though. I think he's a really talented player in his own right. I'm going to give the other guys that can talk a little bit more at a later date, but those 3 for sure are guys that are going to definitely find themselves in that the first 5 picks or so for the QMJHL draft. I left the rest here. Obviously, if you catch this late, feel free to review your thoughts there. But those are guys who I think, you haven't looked at them already. They're guys to look at coming into the QMJHL and to watch them over the course of the next few years. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to go to the QMJHL one now. It's the QMJHL draft. I'll share the screen here. So the Western Hockey League draft, sorry. So the Western Hockey League here, really high-end players as well. Obviously, everybody that follows decently within the prospect world knows about Max Schultz. Max Schultz is played at the under 18 level and has been phenomenal throughout his time. He just got exceptional status to be able to be full-time at the under 18 level. Should be really interesting to watch him grow as a player. To me, he's clear. I don't think he's clearing away the number 1, but he's pretty dang close. Because looking at number 2, you got Liam Pugh, who has recently come up through the summer and had a massive summer in terms of, showing up at different camps and being completely dominant. Really big kid too. He's probably closer to 6'2" now, about $160, $170. Has been playing at the U17 level as a 14-year-old, and he's just been super dominant. Liam Pugh is a guy you definitely want to watch out for here in the coming years. Great shot, good skater. I mean, he finds goals from angles you don't expect. Just a really, really strong player. Obviously, there's a case of, is the kid big and just dominating because of his size? I don't see that with Liam Pugh. I think he's a guy who is going to bring a lot of skill, a lot of potential, and he just brings it all the time. So, a lot to like there with Liam Pugh. And then finally, I'm going to talk about a couple more of these guys. So I'm going to talk about Crosby Matejchuk now. He is Denton Matejchuk's brother. To me, he's one of the more out of the CHL scope of defensemen for the 2009-2010 classes. Crosby Matejchuk to me is one of the higher upside guys. Super good skater, really offensively gifted, very advanced for his age. Not the biggest guy in the world. He's not listed here for height and weight, but I want to say he was listed last I saw at 5'8", 5'9". So we'll see where his growth is in his game. Definitely a guy who's going to adjust well to the Western Hockey League, and we'll see where he goes from here. And then the last guy I want to talk about is Walker Filowich. Another guy who I've seen in a couple of viewings, always jumps off the page for me. Really good around the net. Doesn't do anything that is super amazing, but just always in the right areas. A super smart player. Finds his way. He works hard. He battles hard. He's just a lot to like with Walker Filowich. But obviously, I think the cream of the crop here is Schultz and Pugh are clearing away the 1 and 2. I would think they're going to switch 1 and 2 throughout the year, and then you got your gap of 3 through 15 for the Western Hockey League draft. So, a couple names to watch out there: Maddox Schultz, Liam Pugh. In the QMJHL, I would talk about Alexis Joseph, Scantlebury, and Palmerville. And then I'm going to do one last share here for the OHL. And the OHL draft has got a lot of different guys here that are going to bring some likes here. So let me go ahead and present my screen here for that. So the OHL draft. The guy who I think could really, to me, he's far and away the one is Brock Chitteroni. So Brock Chitteroni he's played up, for a lot of years now, playing at the U16 level already when a lot of these guys have not played U16 hockey yet, and has been dominant. The Barrie Colts were a very talented team this year at the U15 level. He's obviously going to go in, at the U16 level this year. He's obviously going to come in and probably either play that same level. He probably will play the same level because he wants to play with his age group. Not the biggest guy in the world, but just really impressive that he's been able to be double underagers in certain situations or triple underagers in certain situations. And he's been good at every step of the way. So for me, I think he's far and away the one. Cade McGregor is a kid who has been really impressive at all levels as well. Good skater, great shot. And he's always, you're always going to get 25 or 30 goals from him, regardless of what level he's playing at. Super elusive, skater. Look forward to getting more viewings of him this year as well. And just a couple other guys that I think are of note. Jacko Wysisk. Another guy who played up and has played against a double underager, really impressive. All those guys there at the U15 level, especially Kingston Harris and Ryerson Edgar. Those are guys who have dominated at various levels throughout their, career. Should be really impressive to watch. And finally, the last kid I'm going to talk about is Johnny McLaughlin. Again, similar situation to Jacko and, Brock, playing up a level consistently for the Lambton Junior Sting, playing at the Alliance level. So obviously him and Jacko have played a lot over the course of the last few years. Both of them are really high-end skaters. Both of them are super puck savvy and really bring a lot of offense to their game. There's more to like, from both of them, but I think they're both guys who are going to definitely succeed at the OHL level. And, given this extra year development, there's going to be a lot to like there. So, went really quick through those. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and then we can talk more. I can get to more questions if there's any more on here. Otherwise, I'll go for maybe another 4 or 5 minutes. Just some other things I want to talk about as well. One thing that's been a hot topic in the prospect world is the firing of Jeff Merrick from Sportsnet. That was interesting to say the least because, reasons have come out now that he was fired because he was leaking draft picks before they were actually public, which is not really that surprising because, you look at the NBA, and that's a very common trait now in the NBA draft where Shams Charania has done it. And, Woj has dropped the Woj bombs before everybody else knows about him. So obviously Sportsnet and the Nevada Gaming Commission didn't like the fact it happened in Las Vegas. Obviously led to the situation that resided. Now, Jeff Merrick's looking for work in a different role in a different network and in a different position. So obviously sadly missed in the prospect world, his narrative and everything he talks about the sport of hockey. He's a blessing in disguise and somebody who I'm really drawn to and listening to a lot of his content. It's a shame to lose him in such an important space like Sportsnet. So hoping he lands on his feet and lands in a different career path, and hopefully can be seen a lot more, whether it be on ESPN, whether it be on TNT, or starting his own podcast, which has obviously been proven to be done by a lot of different people. Maybe he joins the Athletic Hockey Show. We'll see where that goes, but he could be in any of those situations and would do just fine. Finally, I'm going to get into a couple more prospects just offhand that are guys you're going to want to watch out for. One of them in particular is a 2011 born. So we're talking 13 years old now, okay? It's about as young as I'll probably talk about a prospect, but this kid has proven it time and again. There's a kid playing in the Czech Under 15 League. His name is Dominik Zalesny. If you don't know the name, learn it. I'm going to do a video on him pretty shortly. An absolute superstar in the making. He is putting up Gretzky-like numbers at, Czech levels that nobody's ever done before. Jaromir Jagr's never done it. Pasternak's never done it. Martin Straka, Robert Reichel, you name the prospect, they have never done it like Dominik Zalesny has. So Dominik Zalesny is a guy you're going to want to keep on your radar. He's way down the line. He's still got 5 or 6 years before he's even drafted. But he's a guy who I'm telling you right now is, if you could bet in Vegas, I would bet a house on him to be an NHL superstar. He's that good. Very impressive player in his own right. And then finally, obviously, there's some other prospects that you're seeing at the CHL level. One guy in particular I want to draw a lot of attention to is Gavin McKenna. Gavin McKenna, for those who don't know, is Connor Bedard's cousin. And he's from the Yukon in Canada. An absolute superstar in the making. I think he's far and away the best prospect that isn't in the NHL right now. I would rate him number 1 in this year's class. I would have rated him number 1 in 24. Really, really super good hockey player, good mindset, unbelievably skilled. A lot to like there for Gavin McKenna. He has everything you could ever ask for in a elite prospect. Bigger even than Connor was. Both of those guys, Dominik Zalesny and Gavin McKenna, those are 2 guys right now, looking at them, are can't miss NHL prospects. Both of them are going to go number 1 overall in their draft years. There's not even a question in my mind. Those are the guys to watch out for. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and log off now. I didn't want to go too long tonight. Just want to do kind of a shorter segment here and a shorter live stream with you guys. So greatly appreciate those that have commented. Thank you, Jack, for being on here. Thanks to those that have come on here as well and listened. If you're watching on replay, again, please leave your comments in the chat below. I will definitely get to them whenever I can. And looking forward to getting more feedback from you guys on these live streams as well as some future ones I'm going to do in the not too distant future. So if you haven't tuned in tonight, feel free to leave it on here. And thanks, 2001. Appreciate you, man. And if you haven't gotten into the content, I'm going to go ahead and log off now. Feel free to leave your questions in the chat. Appreciate you guys and have a good one.